Hello, and welcome to this series where I am taking you through how I am becoming a web developer, or at least trying to become a web developer. This is the end of week 1. It's been a little bit of an odd week. I, kind of rushed through some things, probably didn't learn as much as I wanted to on them, but on a few topics that I thought I knew, I've learned one or two new tricks and tips. And there's stuff that I need to implement a lot more and just take the time to learn it. It's not going to happen overnight, so it has been a bit of a strange one. Let's first dive into how much time I've spent this week on web development. So in my previous video I stated that I wanted to do between 6 and 10 hours a day. I'll be honest, didn't hit that once. So I am a little bit disappointed in myself, but I probably set my goal a little bit too high, and it's going to take a little bit of time to, get back into the routine of learning full time and just focusing for that amount, for that duration. So in total, I spent about 25 hours on web development, which averaged at about 4 hours a day. The average is a little bit skewed because on Saturday I only did 2 hours in the morning. But for the rest of the week, Monday to Friday, my time was slowly increasing throughout the week, which is pretty positive, so I'm going to take that as a win. How my 25 hours was broken up: I had my tutorial and my projects. I spent 11 hours and 13 minutes on tutorials. That can, be anything from watching YouTube videos, reading web articles, or I did some Skillshare courses. I did a different tact on how I would normally do a tutorial. So, last year when I was doing it for the first time, I used to just follow along. I would have the video or whatever on one screen and my code on the other, and I would just be typing along, following, which I think is how most people do it. This past week I've written my notes by hand, so I didn't follow along with the examples entirely. Now, I didn't write the code out by hand. I maybe picked out one or two key bits that I would write, but it was really just getting the general idea of the topic, and it's worked really well. I would learn it in the morning and then I would be applying it in the afternoon, and I could see where my shortfalls are. It's something I want to continue doing it that way, notes by hand. I then do type them up later and just, kind of not copying. So I then apply it myself later on. I don't know how well that will work in the future with really complex stuff. But until I kind of fail doing this method, it's what I'm going to be continuing with. The rest of my time was spent on the projects, so that is about 13 hours and 46 minutes, something along those lines. And, that was building small elements for a website, building a pretty rough looking website, and I actually tried a front-end mentor challenge. Keyword being tried. I'll show you everything in a minute. For next week, I want to slowly increase my time, try for 5 hours a day, and then, week on week, just start increasing that number. So what did I actually cover this week? I didn't look at kind of basic elements like HTML anchor tags or paragraphs, H1s, things like that. I didn't go into that kind of detail because I've learned it in the past. Similarly with CSS, I didn't learn colors or font family, font size, borders. I generally kind of have a good understanding of those. If anyone does want to learn that kind of stuff, go check out Free Code Camp. They have a really good section called, I think it's Responsive Web Design, where it will teach you HTML and CSS. So what I did cover was Doctypes. Now, I was a little bit disappointed with the Doctypes. Yes, with HTML5 you basically have the one doctype, but a lot of the videos I covered really didn't talk about the previous versions, which I guess makes sense because if it's not used that much anymore, do you really need to know it? So weighing that up, I covered things like the box model, and what I learned there actually was if you have two elements on top of each other, the margin for both elements don't add up. So say if you had a 10 pixel margin and a 10 pixel margin, it's not a 20 pixel gap, it's just 10 pixels. So I didn't really know that. It's quite interesting. If you do it side by side though, they do add up, so you would get a 20 pixel gap. I also went into kind of like HTML, CSS best practices, CSS priority, and Flexbox. So a lot of interesting topics I picked up. Let's jump over to the computer and I'll take you through my little elements that I've been building this week. Don't get your hopes up. They may not look that great. So one of the first kind of elements I created was almost like a user card example. I've created two of these. Now both of these layouts use a display grid. Display grid is something I'm fairly comfortable with, but I'm going to review it next week. It's got a few kind of hover options. What I don't really like is with this one, when it adds the border, it's kind of increasing the size a little bit. And I've got border box on, so I just need to look at why it's doing that in a little bit more detail. This example doesn't really have any kind of really hover items. This one isn't really responsive, so if we just shrink the screen down slightly there, it just really, just gets a bit shorter. It does change font size, I believe, but this isn't anything fantastic. However, if we go to the other user card and we shrink the screen down slightly, you do see it. There's the one media query, and then it shrinks again, and I put it into a one column layout. I switch the buttons around, so I'm quite happy with that. Like I say, could make it look a little bit more appealing. A slight border radius would have been good on the buttons to get rid of that sharp squareness. But yeah, overall I'm quite happy with that. The second one I'm not too happy with. The next kind of elements that I started to build were user forms. So I've got this example of like a sign-in page, existing user or create an account, and I've got a newsletter kind of sign up. Again, I don't think this would be a great item on its own. You would obviously want some kind of image to entice the user to sign in or sign up. So it would have been better if I had kind of two buttons along the top, and you could have been like existing user or create an account rather than a side-by-side view. But again, a few hover options. You've got your passwords, the font changes color to the orange, which is quite nice. So yeah, I'm fairly happy with that. And again, this one is responsive. It shrinks down to one column. I like that bar that goes across when it's either vertical or horizontal. However, this second one I wasn't a big fan of. It was nice to use like a background image. I don't know why I went for blue. Like a brown color would have been better to go with like coffee. These look a little bit cramped and it isn't really responsive. So if I shrink it down, there's kind of an overlap with the coffee image. And it can be a little bit hard to read. So I'm not overly impressed with this weekly newsletter. As part of the Flexbox Skillshare course I was taking, the teacher talked about the Holy Grail setup. I thought this was a really good example to learn how to use Flexbox. So again, this has got media queries in and it resizes based on how big the screen is. So I'm quite happy with that. For some reason, it took me ages to center the text. I think I had to do another display flex for each item, but yeah, I probably just coded that up really badly. Then I've got two kind of nav bars, and these are very, very basic. You've got your usual top nav, nothing really special there, just a display flex. It doesn't really resize. And I've got this kind of side view with the logo that would go here. Again, I think I spent far too much time on these two nav bars for how basic they are. I did really enjoy like doing a neon style light, learning how to do that. And on these hover effects, I thought that was really cool, but other than that, I didn't really learn too much doing these nav bars. This kind of like daily newspaper I really enjoyed doing. You know, I've got nav across the top, which is Flexbox. Everything is kind of Flexbox. Did build this twice actually. The first time I did it as a desktop first, and then tried to resize it for mobile, and then the second time I built it for mobile first. So if I shrink it down to like kind of mobile screen, you know, you've still got your nav, possibly a bit too much space going on here. You know, got the headers, images, maybe not a great quality image. This finance at a glance section, I really like. I did look at the BBC website and I saw this, and looked at a bit of their code, and I've tried to make it my own a little bit. And it's actually got like a class before the text, and this line goes through the back of the text, and with the kind of the title, it's got a background on it, so you don't see the line behind it. So I really like that look, and it resizes quite nicely. You know, you got your favicons at the bottom. Favicons, I don't know if the icons at the bottom. And yeah, it resizes quite nicely. I do have a paragraph here which is hidden on the smaller screens, because otherwise the kind of text would be far too long. So when it resizes, it changes that from display none to, you know, normal display. So I'm quite happy with this, you know, using images, hovers, icons and flex. It was a good experience. The last kind of project that I worked on was from Front End Mentor, which is a really cool site. If you haven't looked at it before, they've got loads of challenges where you kind of replicate a design they have. So I've got the free version where they don't give you a Figma file. So I've tried to build my own Figma designs from there, which is again good practice using Figma. You know, it's not something I've used very often. Got a desktop kind of original version. Ignore the lines, that was just me putting them in. And you've got a mobile version. So I've just tried to do like a basic design following that. There's a few things which could look a little bit better, but I was quite happy playing around with Figma. However, my first attempt at coding this did not go well. As you can see, it's just, I have no idea what happened. It's just an awful mess. And yeah, I tried, you know, resizing it for mobile, which looks a little bit better because I was doing it mobile first, but it's still not ideal. You know, that image just, I don't know what is going on with that. And, you know, there's no margin at the top. So I was a bit disappointed, and I was starting to pull my hair out on this. My next thought was to actually just build it using a box. So put in like divs or sections and build it using kind of just boxes, which went a lot better. Still a little bit more margin space could be done at the top compared to the original design. You know, I've got the background image in the main image, and then yeah, that'll be header, text section, the first kind of button section, payment and cancel. So yeah, I think I've done an alright job, and I just need to finish coding that up. It even works quite well on mobiles. If I'm on a smaller screen, it still works really well. And I think I need to change the media query slightly, because I think it needs to be 1440 pixels before it changes. But yeah, I'm generally quite happy with that. It was a bit of a challenge. I still need to complete it, obviously, which I'm looking forward to doing, and that will be probably my first project next week, is to just finish this off. And that's everything that I've done this week in terms of my projects and building elements. I'd love to get your feedback, you know, what you think I should be looking to improve next. Definitely design is top of my list. It's going to take time and effort to learn how to design things nicely. I'd also really like to see what you guys have created. I want to start looking at other people's code and seeing how they've done things differently to what I've done. So yeah, let me know if you've got any projects. I would happily look over them. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and if you want to see more of these types of videos, hit the subscribe. Thank you all, and I'll catch you all later.